AITA for stopping to look after my niece after she called me a slur. I've known Claire for years. Our friendship has always been strong, almost like we were sisters. We've shared so much together, supported each other through the ups and downs of life, and built a bond that felt unbreakable. So when Claire asked me to be her maid of honor, I was beyond excited. It was such an honor to be that important to her. I dove in wholeheartedly, helping with everything from the wedding plans to picking out dresses and organizing small details. I didn't hesitate to spend money on things like gifts and the dress because I wanted to make sure everything was perfect for her special day. I was genuinely thrilled to be so involved in such a big moment in her life. Then everything changed after I shared that I was pregnant. At first, Claire was really happy for me. She congratulated me and everything seemed normal. But as time passed, I started to notice that something wasn't right. Claire's behavior began shifting. She started distancing herself from me, and I couldn't help but feel left out. It wasn't just a minor shift. She was excluding me from some of the most important wedding decisions. Instead of asking for my opinion, she'd give short, vague responses like, "We'll talk about that later," or "I'll get back to you on that." It felt like I was being brushed aside. The worst part was how Claire seemed to treat me differently because of my pregnancy. She made passive comments that made it clear she didn't view me the same way anymore. The closer we got to the wedding day, the more I realized that I wasn't really a part of the planning anymore. It hurt. Honestly, I tried not to let it bother me at first, thinking maybe it was just wedding stress. But as time went on, it became clear that I was being sidelined. Not just in the wedding, but in our friendship as a whole. That's when I started feeling like something was seriously wrong. I was completely blindsided when Claire sat me down to talk. I could tell something was off, but I never in a million years expected what was coming. She straight up told me that she was replacing me as maid of honor. I was stunned. I honestly thought she was joking at first, but when I saw the serious look on her face, I realized this wasn't a prank. Then came the bombshell. She told me the reason was because I was getting too fat, and that my pregnancy wasn't fitting into the vision she had for her wedding. She didn't sugarcoat it. There was no delicate way of saying it. She said it exactly like that. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I mean, what kind of friend says something like that? At first, I didn't know how to respond. I asked her, "Is this because I'm pregnant?" and tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, hoping maybe there was a misunderstanding. But Claire just brushed it off, saying it wasn't personal. She kept insisting that she just had a very specific vision for her wedding and that I wasn't part of that vision anymore. It honestly felt like she was trying to convince me that it wasn't about my pregnancy, but how could it not be? I had been there for her through everything, supporting her every step of the way. I had helped her with planning, given my time, my money, and my energy. And now, I was being told I wasn't good enough to stand by her on the most important day of her life, just because I was pregnant. That stung more than anything. It wasn't just about the maid of honor position. It felt like I was being discarded as a friend, too. I kept trying to wrap my head around it. We had been through so much together. To be tossed aside so easily felt like a slap in the face. It wasn't just the hurtful words, it was the complete lack of empathy, the lack of consideration for everything I had done for her. And the worst part? She didn't even seem sorry. It was almost like she thought I should understand, like she was justified in making such a hurtful decision. I was still in shock as I tried to process everything. How do you continue a friendship after something like that? How could she do this to me after everything we'd shared? After everything that had happened, I made a decision. If Claire didn't want me in her wedding anymore, then I wasn't going to be there at all. It was a hard choice, but honestly, I just couldn't bring myself to be a part of something where I felt so disrespected. But that wasn't all. I had spent a significant amount of money in preparation for being maid of honor. Between the dress, gifts, and other wedding-related expenses, I had put a lot of my own money into the event. And now, since I wasn't even going to be attending, let alone participating in any of the wedding duties, I thought it was fair to ask for reimbursement. So I gathered all the receipts, every single one of them, and handed them over to Claire. I explained that I had only made these purchases because I was going to be part of the wedding. Since that role was no longer mine, I felt it was only right for her or her fiancé to cover those costs. I wasn't trying to be petty or unreasonable. I was just asking for what felt fair. If I wasn't going to be a part of the wedding, then I shouldn't be financially responsible for it. But, of course, Claire did not take this well. She absolutely flipped out. She was furious, and get this, she called me selfish. She accused me of trying to ruin her wedding by asking for reimbursement, like I was somehow the one in the wrong for wanting my money back. Honestly, I couldn't believe it. All I had done was ask for what I thought was completely reasonable. I wasn't trying to start a fight or cause drama. I was just asking for fairness after everything that had happened. The more I thought about it, the more baffled I became. It wasn't like I was asking for something outrageous. I was just trying to cover the costs I'd already paid, but instead of an apology or even an understanding, I was met with anger and accusations. It was like my feelings didn't matter at all. She didn't even seem to care about how hurtful everything had been up until that point. It was all about her wedding, and I was just expected to silently take it, or else I was being selfish. As if things weren't bad enough, Claire's fiancé and her family decided to get involved. It wasn't just Claire anymore. Her entire side of the family was now bombarding me with messages, and instead of offering any support or understanding, they basically piled on. They called me petty and accused me of overreacting, claiming it was all because of pregnancy hormones. Can you imagine? Here I was, trying to explain how hurtful everything had been, and instead of validating my feelings, they just dismissed me like I was some overly emotional person who couldn't handle the situation. It felt like I was being belittled for being pregnant, as if my emotions didn't count just because of my condition. The way they completely ignored the real issue and chose to gaslight me was beyond frustrating. They didn't care that I had been let down, that I had put my time, effort, and money into being a supportive maid of honor. Instead, they turned it all around on me, making it seem like I was the one in the wrong. Honestly, this constant backlash was emotionally draining. Every time I tried to explain how hurt I was, they made it seem like I was being unreasonable. They didn't acknowledge my pain or the fact that I had been disrespected. Instead, they kept shifting the blame onto me, making it seem like I was just being difficult. I started questioning myself, wondering if I was overreacting or if I should have just let everything slide. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just about the money or being excluded from the wedding. It was about how I was treated, like my feelings didn't matter at all. The emotional toll of being dismissed and made to feel like I was the one causing trouble was exhausting. It was hard to just brush it off and pretend like everything was fine. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't the one at fault. But that didn't make it any easier to deal with the constant pressure and criticism coming from Claire's side. Thankfully, through all of this chaos, my husband was there for me. From the moment I told him what had happened, he was incredibly supportive. He looked at me and told me I did the right thing by standing up for myself. He kept reminding me that I shouldn't be left out of pocket for a wedding I was no longer involved in. Honestly, his words meant so much to me, especially when I felt like I was being torn apart by Claire's actions and everything that came after. He kept telling me that I didn't deserve to be treated like this, that my feelings mattered, and that I had every right to demand reimbursement. Having him in my corner made it easier to stay firm in my decision. Every time I questioned myself, I'd think about what he said, and it helped me push through. But let's be real, self-doubt is a tough thing to shake. Even though I knew I had every right to be upset and to ask for the money back, there were moments when I thought, did I take things too far? Maybe I should have just let it slide. Maybe the friendship meant more than the money. And of course there was that nagging thought that maybe things could have been fixed if I just let go of the situation and tried to be the bigger person. But despite my doubts, my husband was unwavering. He kept telling me that it wasn't just about the money. It was about respect, boundaries, and not letting people walk all over me. Even so, there was this emotional weight that I couldn't shake. I still wanted to maintain the friendship. I didn't want to lose something that had been important to me for so long. But as the situation dragged on, I realized that sometimes setting boundaries means making difficult decisions, even when you're torn about them. And honestly, it was comforting knowing my husband had my back. His support gave me the strength to move forward, even though it wasn't easy. The emotional toll of everything made it hard, but at least I wasn't facing it alone.